Hello, you're watching a movie night review. It's Albert here. I know it's been a while since our last, my last video certainly, but I thought I'd talk to you today about some of the films that I saw in 2018 and what I thought of them. A lot of the reviews for some of these films are already up on the blog, so obviously the link's in the description there, and also in the description you'll be able to see the times for each of the films I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to go through all the films I saw in 2018 in the cinema, new films, and just tell you briefly what I thought of each one. So without further ado, the first film I saw in 2018 was Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Still probably my favourite film I saw in the whole year. It is really, really good. I would definitely recommend you watch it. It's funny, it's sad, it's brilliant, a really, really good piece of work. Next, we have The Commuter, which is this Liam Neeson kind of thriller film. It's pretty boring, to be honest. It's not as good as the first Taken. It has a couple of okay moments, but mostly it's just boring, and I wouldn't really recommend it. Next, we have The Post. It is an important story to tell, especially with the president that we have at the moment in America, but it's so boring. Honestly, I cannot remember any memorable scene in this film. It's so boring, but I mean the performances are good, but I can't really recommend this one just because it is pretty boring. Next, we have Darkest Hour. I've spoken already on this channel about Darkest Hour and why I don't like it. Gary Oldman gives a really good performance, a convincing performance as Winston Churchill, but there are so many stupid scenes in it, and the stupidest scene in particular being the scene on London Underground I already discussed, which takes the film down several ratings in my opinion. I can't really recommend it other than for seeing the good Gary Oldman performance, but other than that it's not very good. Next, we've got Downsizing. Downsizing is a weird film. It is the first half. It's about Matt Damon and his wife trying to shrink themselves. And for the first half, you're kind of like, oh, okay, right, I get it. This is quite interesting. But then the second half, it goes off completely. It's a really weird film. And I don't even know what it goes on about in the second half. I don't really recommend it. It's too long and confusing and very strange. It's a really weird film. Next, we have Black Panther, the first Marvel film that was released this year. And it's been nominated for Best Picture just today, or just as I've been recording this video for the Oscars. And I enjoyed Black Panther. I think it is a good Marvel film, very entertaining, very interesting. It's got a good villain and an interesting hero, and lots of good stuff about it. But I don't think it's quite as amazing as it has been made out by quite a lot of people. It does have some silly moments and some not very good CGI at points, and like the third act isn't as interesting. It's not as good. It's nowhere near the best Marvel movie, and it's good. It's entertaining, and therefore I can recommend it. But it is not quite as good as it's been made out. Next, we have The Shape of Water. The Shape of Water is a really interesting film. Actually, it's a film I liked a lot from Guillermo del Toro, and it's the film about a woman who falls in love with a fish man. But it's so much more than that. It's got interesting themes, beautiful visuals. It's a film I really liked actually, and I can definitely recommend it. Definitely worth a watch. A film I enjoyed a lot. Next, we have Lady Bird. I've said before on the Movie Night blog, I don't like Lady Bird. I find it really annoying. The central character is really annoying, dislikable. So anytime she's on, I'm really disliking her. And most of the other time, I'm just really bored. It's a boring film and an annoying film, and I can appreciate that the performance is good, and it's not badly made, but it's a film that it's a personal dislike thing more than anything else. I personally dislike it, and I personally dislike the story, and the film, I think it is quite cliched, and has you kind of know where the plot's going, and the plot doesn't really go anywhere, and I say that it's this central dislikability of the main character that really makes the film terribly unlikable, in my opinion. Next we have I, Tonya. I, Tonya is a film I really like. I saw it a couple of times at the cinema, and I enjoyed it each time I saw it. I think the performances in it are fantastic. Margot Robbie is brilliant in it, as is Sebastian Stan and Alison Janney. The director brought a really interesting flair to it. It's an interesting story told in a really interesting and inventive way. I definitely recommend I, Tonya. It's moving and entertaining, and yeah, I can really highly recommend it. Really good film. Next we have Red Sparrow. Now Red Sparrow is a kind of spy thriller thing starring Jennifer Lawrence, but I really don't like it actually. It's very violent in a way that seems quite unnecessary at times, and sort of quite jarring. The story is very boring and generic, and it's just I really didn't like it, and it didn't help as well that when I saw it in the cinema, the projector was misaligned, so the entire bottom half of the screen was or the entire a section of the bottom of the screen was cut off. So I really don't like Red Sparrow, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it. Next we have Game Night. Game Night's a comedy about people playing board games. It's got Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams in. It's actually surprisingly funny. Has some good funny moments. Jesse Plemons in particular's character, he steals every scene he's in. It was better than I expected, and you get a good solid few laughs out of it. It's not the most amazing film ever made, but it's pretty funny. You get a good few laughs. Next we have Tomb Raider. Pretty boring. The plot is very generic, not much to remember about. I thought Alicia Vikander was pretty good. She's a good actress, but there's really not much to say about this film. I was on Netflix the other day, and I saw that the film's already on Netflix, despite that it only came out this year, which I think is testament to its forgettable nature. Next is You Were Never Really Here, the Lynn Ramsey film starring Joaquin Phoenix. It's interesting. It has some interesting ideas in it, and the score is fantastic. Cinema I saw it and had a really great sound system, made it really atmospheric. But again, I think that's slightly the problem with it is it's all atmosphere and no real substance. You don't really get to grips with the character and with the story enough. There's not really enough going on. It's just character. It's just Joaquin Phoenix going around. I mean, there are some really, really, really good scenes in it. But again, I wasn't as crazy about it as some people were. So yeah. Next we have Blockers. There's a picture of a chicken on the poster, or I should say a male chicken, and then Blockers, so you can guess what that's going for. It's a comedy with John Cena in it, and some. It's about parents trying to stop their kids losing their virginity on prom night, and that makes it sound bad, but it's better than I expected. There are a good couple of laughs in it. It's not the best thing ever made, but it has its okay funny moments. I wouldn't recommend it that much. It would pass the time. It's okay. Next we have Isle of Dogs, the Wes Anderson animated film set in Japan. I quite liked it. It's again, I wasn't as crazy about it as some people were. I think the animation is fantastic. It looks really nice, but the story was nothing special really, and it wasn't quite as interesting as I thought it could be. But it had some decent moments in it, and it was an enjoyable film. Next we have Ready Player One. I quite enjoyed it. It again has some interesting visuals and some interesting moments. There's some stuff in it I don't like. The sort of constant references stuff it gets a little bit wearing, but it's an enjoyable film, and you'll be entertained by it when watching it. It's got some interesting ideas in there. Next we have Avengers Infinity War, the big Marvel release of the year, and it is really, really good. It's probably one of my favourite Marvel films. It's funny and quite moving at times, and leaves you on this amazing cliffhanger at the end. I'm really looking forward to the conclusion part in Avengers Endgame next year, or this year I should say. Really, really good. I really enjoyed it. Next we have Rampage, which is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film, in which he's like a mentor to this gorilla, but then the gorilla gets infected by something, and it fights this other monster. It's exactly what you'd expect from this kind of film, and it's stupid and has terrible dialogue, but it's okay. It had some okay moments. Again, don't go into it expecting anything more than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with a giant gorilla. That is really what you should expect. Next we have Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2 I thought was really funny. I think it was almost as funny as the first one, really. It expands nicely on the character, gives lots of other stuff. Just a good laugh, good story, interesting characters, a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it. Next we have Solo, a Star Wars story. Like, people kept giving this a lot of flack, saying, this is going to be terrible, Disney doing Star Wars again. I didn't hate The Last Jedi as much as the Star Wars fandom seemed to do. But I did quite enjoy Solo. I don't think it's the best film ever, but I enjoyed it while I was watching it. I think Alden Ehrenreich was really good as Han Solo. And I think that the story was good. I didn't like the robot with Lando, the sort of social justice warrior robot. I thought that was pretty stupid. But on the whole, I thought that it was an entertaining enough movie, and it was pretty good. Especially because it's considering all the production trouble it had beforehand. It looked like a coherent, interesting, proper movie. Next we have Entebbe. Entebbe is a strange film. It tells a story of a sort of hostage situation which took place in Entebbe, Uganda. But every time the film looks like it's going to be good, it then goes off in some weird other direction. The final conclusionary raid that occurs on Entebbe to free the hostages is sort of interspersed with a weird contemporary dance thing. Honestly, it's a baffling thing to behold. The big raid that your film has been leading to at the end is just kind of ruined by this weird contemporary dance. It's such a strange film, and I can't really recommend it because it's kind of boring and has really some strange scenes. There's a scene where Rosamund Pike, who's playing one of the terrorists, makes a call home, and it's really weird. It's weird. It's hard to explain, but it was strange and pretty bad, really. Another big release now is in Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, a sequel to, obviously, to Jurassic World. Loads of people again didn't like this film. It was quite poorly received. I think I probably enjoyed it more than most people. I think it's because I have kind of a bit more of a connection to the Jurassic Park franchise. Certainly, I have more of a connection to it even than Star Wars. So I was prepared to cut it a bit of slack, and I kind of liked it. I know it had some silly stuff in it, but it also had some enjoyable moments. And maybe it's just because I like dinosaurs, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. Next, Ocean's 8. I didn't really like this film that much, to be honest. I think I found it just quite boring. The cast were doing a decent job, but the story itself is just predictable and boring, and there's just so many shots of like jewelry and clothes that I don't really care about. I know it's only the equivalent of showing like cars for men, but I thought it was pretty forgettable, pretty bland. Next we have The Incredibles 2, the sequel many years later to the first Incredibles. Again, loads of people loved this film, but I wasn't as crazy about it. I wasn't that crazy about the first one. I know there's a film, I think I did a review on the blog about the original Incredibles. I'm not as crazy about it as many people are. People regard it as one of the best Pixar films. It's never been that for me. I thought it was just quite standard, really. And I think I thought the same with Incredibles 2. It was entertaining while I watched it, and again, the animation's really, really good. as we've come to expect from Pixar, but it's not the best thing I've ever seen. It was okay. Next we have Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Another sequel, this time to the hit film Mamma Mia. I liked the first Mamma Mia. It's very entertaining. It's entertaining. The songs are good. Pierce Brosnan singing in inverted commas is something to behold. But the second one, I felt it didn't really capture the same magic that the first one did. The first one sort of managed to find its way. The second one has too many forgettable songs and just feels a bit like a retread that doesn't really feel that necessary, really, for me. And actually, the decision, I think most people know now that Meryl Streep's character is dead, and it casts a very sad hue over the whole film that doesn't really belong in Mamma Mia, really. I didn't like it as much as I thought I might. Next we have Antman and the Wasp, another Marvel film that came out this year. Again, I liked it. It's got the same Marvel charm as usual. It sort of expands on the Ant-Man story that we saw in the first movie. It's got some decent action in. The whole going small thing is really good. Not the best Marvel film ever, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. Next we have The Meg. Now, The Meg is exactly what you would expect it to be, pretty much. It's Jason Statham fighting a shark. The only problem is that there's a lot of other stuff in there that's just not that necessary. Like, lots of discussion and stuff. It's surprisingly boring at times, and is just pretty silly, really. I didn't like it. It's silly enough to carry it off, and has two different love interests for Jason Statham, and it's strange. It's not the worst thing ever. It is what you'd expect. It's The Meg, but again, I wouldn't recommend it that much, really. It's The Meg. Next, Mission Impossible Fallout. Now, I was blown away by how good Mission Impossible Fallout was. Actually, I enjoyed the Mission Impossible films, but I think that Mission Impossible Fallout was one of the best ones yet. It has some amazing action. Tom Cruise throwing himself into these stunts that are really impressive. It's a really enjoyable action film with some great moments of tension. I would highly recommend it as the proper summer blockbuster that almost everyone can enjoy. I really liked it. Next we have The Festival. It's a comedy from the creators of The Inbetweeners, and I really like The Inbetweeners. I think that The Inbetweeners is one of my favourite comedies, and so I was really let down by The Festival. I don't think it's the worst thing that's ever made, and it has a couple of funny jokes, but there's a big period in the middle of the film where I just wasn't laughing at all, and you just think, like, surely the people who came up with The Inbetweeners should be able to come up with something better than this, but it's just not nearly funny enough, and it's just not that good, and I really wouldn't recommend you watching it. Next, BlackKklansman, the Spike Lee film about a cop going undercover in the Ku Klux Klan. It's an interesting film. It has some really, really good moments in it. Some good performances, particularly by Adam Driver. He's really good. I don't think it's not the best film of the year, and it's sort of the awards attention is getting. I don't think it's hugely as well deserved. It's okay. Yeah, it's entertaining. I think perhaps because I had really high expectations for it, I wasn't as blown away as I expected. But a good film, a very enjoyable film, and an interesting one. Now, the Happytime Murders. The Happytime Murders was destroyed by critics. It was hailed as the one of the worst films of the year. It's in the Razzie Awards. It's been nominated in loads of categories, and yeah, it is bad. It's not very funny, and any scene with Melissa McCarthy in it is really unfunny. But it's equally not the worst thing ever. I did laugh a couple of times, and I think the premise could have worked. The idea of a kind of puppet detective and a kind of adult puppet thing could have worked, but it doesn't really here. It's not quite as bad as some critics said, but it's pretty bad. Pretty bad. Next is American Animals. American Animals was an interesting film. I enjoyed it. It's about a group of boys who attempt to pull off a heist at university, but it's essentially there's no motivation behind the heist other than boredom almost, which makes it gives it an interesting dynamic, and it uses recreations, actors recreating it, interspersed with sort of documentary footage of the real people, which I think gives it an interesting dynamic. It's not the best film ever made, but I do think it was interesting. It had some good moments. Next, Searching. The gimmick of Searching is a kind of crime mystery thriller, but it's all shot through screens, so through people's laptops and phones and things like that, which makes it to sound gimmicky. But I did actually quite enjoy it. It is, at the centre of it is a really good mystery thriller. It is a bit silly at times, and it's not. There's a lot of stuff that you do think like, could you do that through a screen? But I still enjoyed it. I think it's a good, well worked mystery that is an interesting way of doing it. It doesn't feel gimmicky the whole way through. It does feel like there was a reason that they did it this way. So I would recommend Searching. I think it's quite a good film. Now The Predator. Oh, The Predator is terrible. It's complete rubbish, and please don't watch it because it's terrible. I mean, it's offensive even at times. There's a character who has Tourette's, and that's like his running joke, and it's tone deaf, and the action's terrible, and the dialogue's awful, and honestly, it's complete rubbish. Do not watch The Predator. It's terrible. Oh, and now this. Mile 22, another terrible film. I saw a review of this in some kind of TV guide, and it said, Mark Wahlberg is charming best in an entertaining action thriller. Gave it 4 stars. I don't know what film they saw, but the film I saw was terrible, in which Mark Wahlberg sleepwalks his way through it. There is a couple of entertainingly so bad that they're funny scenes in it. But it's just so boring. The action is terrible, and the plot is so generic, and you just get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, right, that's it. But I cannot recommend it. It lost money, I think, this film, quite a lot of money, and it's terrible. Don't see it. Next is Venom. Venom caused a big divide between audiences and critics. Critics slated it, saying it was terrible. Lots of audience members loved it. Loads of people were saying, it's hilarious, brilliant, love the film. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't think it's quite as bad as some of the critics said, but it's not a good film. The third act kind of action fight between Venom and the villain is just rubbish. The villain is Riz Ahmed. Riz Ahmed is a good actor, but in this film he just has nothing to do, and the villain has the most generic motivation, and even like some of the CGI is not that good. I mean, Tom Hardy is good and he's trying his best, but it's not that good. It's not the worst film that's ever been made, but it's not as good as some people think it is. I don't like it that much. Next is A Simple Favor. Now, A Simple Favor is what to even say about A Simple Favor? What a strange film. I went into it expecting kind of a film like that, the girl on the train or something, kind of like a sort of a female detective type mystery film, but it goes off in all kinds of weird directions and has so many weird plot decisions in it. And the most I can tell you to get out of this film, the best thing you can expect from it is there are some bits that were so weird and bad that I was just laughing. It is unintentionally hilarious. That's all I can really recommend it as, unintentionally hilarious. Next is Bad Times at the El Royale. It's a film. It's very sort of Tarantino-esque. I think it really wants it to be a Tarantino film, and it has some really good elements in, some good performances and interesting plot threads. I don't know if it quite all comes together at the end. I think the ending was a bit unsatisfying, and it's too long. But it has some interesting ideas, and I probably recommend it because it's got some good moments in it, and it's stylistically good. Just not entirely sure whether it comes through at the end completely. First Man, biopic about Neil Armstrong from the director of La La Land, starring Ryan Gosling. It's an interesting film because it's not the film I expected. I expected a film about, the man who got to the moon, as you would expect, and it is about that in a sense. But it's also a film about a man dealing with grief. It's a man dealing with the grief at the loss of his daughter. Now, it has some really amazing visuals in it. The actual visuals of actually being on the moon are impressive. But I think it has the problem that many biopics have, that ultimately that he is going to get to the moon. So the build-up to that, there's no real jeopardy that he's not going to get there, because he does. So I think the film that makes it a bit boring for that reason. So I don't recommend it as that much in respect, but it is an interesting film, and I can appreciate that it was well made and well intentioned in that respect. Just a little bit over long. Next, A Star Is Born. It hasn't done as well in the awards season as it might have done, but I really like it. I think this Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga are both really good. You totally believe that they are a couple in the film, even though they're not a real couple. But it's a really nice film. A film, and I hadn't seen the original, so for me, I didn't know what was going to happen in the end. So I really liked it, and I would definitely recommend it. A film I liked a lot. Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen biopic. The music is obviously a brilliant soundtrack to the film, and I think it's also a well-made, decent film. It's very entertaining. I saw it a couple of times. It's an entertaining. Tells the story of Queen. A really good central performance from Rami Malek. You totally buy that he's Freddie Mercury. So I would definitely recommend Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a film I enjoyed a lot. Now, Widows, the Steve McQueen kind of crime thriller, kind of crime epic. Loads of critics in particular went crazy about this film and said how amazing it was, and it has some really good moments in it. I don't think it comes together quite in the way it should. I don't, and I wasn't as crazy about it as many other people were. I think one person, Daniel Kaluuya in particular, in it is amazing. All the scenes with him are really, really good, but possibly not everybody. Not quite as good with all the other characters. I didn't like it maybe as much as I thought, but an interesting film, and a film nonetheless that I can appreciate, was well made. Next, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. Again, this is a film that not that people didn't take to as much as I would have expected, but I did quite like it, actually. I think it's maybe because I'm such a big fan of Harry Potter. But I enjoy. I thought it has some interesting ideas and does some quite good kind of world building. I say it's not as good as Harry Potter, obviously, but it is. I did enjoy it, and I saw it. So the second time I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than the first time. I think it is visually a really interesting film, and a film I did quite like. Girl in the Spider's Web. This is it's a continuation of the story of Elizabeth Salander, who's in the girl with the dragon tattoo, but this one's not based on a novel. And it has Claire Foy playing the main character. It's not very good, to be honest. I expected it to be a lot better, but it's boring is one of its problems. It's just quite boring. And the action at the end, it turns into, I don't want to spoil it, but there's it just turns into Call of Duty on easy mode. If you see it, you'll understand what I mean. It just gets a bit ridiculous at the end, and genuinely, the third to last scene in the film is in the trailer, and you just think, oh, okay, you know where it's going ultimately. I didn't like it that much. Robin Hood. It's rubbish. It is rubbish. It's very similar to the Guy Ritchie King Arthur film, but essentially Robin Hood instead of King Arthur, and it's as bad as that sounds. Jamie Foxx is terrible in it as Little John. Taron Egerton's trying, but again, it's not that good. The only sort of redeemingly amusing part of it is Ben Mendelsohn as the Sheriff of Nottingham. He's having a lot of fun just being as crazily evil as possible. You almost want to boo anytime he comes on screen. He's that sort of pantomimely evil. But I can't recommend seeing Robin Hood. It's rubbish. It's terrible. Next, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We're nearly done now. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animated Spider-Man film, and really, I really liked it. It really goes into the character of Spider-Man, and what it sort of shows why Spider-Man is such an enduring, popular character. Visually, this film is amazing. It looks really, really good and has a really interesting, intricate plot, and lots of references to other Spider-Man stuff that I really liked. It's definitely the best animated film I saw this year, and is really good. I very much enjoyed it and very much recommend. And finally, the last film I saw in 2018 was Aquaman, the latest installment of the DC Extended Universe, and it's probably one of the better DC films of the DC Extended Universe, that is. It is a lot better than Justice League, which was a complete mess. It does a decent job of explaining the backstory to Aquaman and sort of giving him character. I like the interactions between him and Mira, played by Amber Heard. And I liked some of the action scenes, but I think it ultimately is a bit too long, which makes it just feel a bit unnecessarily long, and a bit too many sort of characters and villains that weren't really necessary. It's not by any means a perfect film, but it's quite enjoyable, and certainly a lot better than Justice League. Definitely. Okay, so that's the full list. That is all the films I saw in 2018 in the cinema. There was a lot of films. And overall, it was a pretty good year. I saw a lot of really good films, a lot of really interesting films. If you're interested in hearing any more of what I had to say, which I would forgive you for thinking you didn't want to, but obviously I wanted to say about the Movie Night blog again. You can see my top 10 best and worst films on there, and all the films that I've said I enjoyed, I would definitely recommend watching. And in terms of more videos to come, I will do a video about Oscar predictions fairly soon, when I've seen some more of the films that haven't been released yet in the UK. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.